Let's bring in a guy who's pretty good at his job. He sucks at drafting a fantasy team. He's joining us right now on the fan hotline. Zack Meisel of The Athletic. What's up, brother? How are you?
Okay, so my favorite thing about Earl is that he loves to get in these digs, but he picks the worst possible times to mention them. Earl, last year we went through this. You started talking trash, but I had beaten you.
Oh,
and
no.
This year you bring this up, but you neglect to mention that in week 1 I scored more points than any other team in the league. Come on, man.
You did.
It sounds like he is actually pretty good at drafting fantasy teams.
Hey, his team's pretty good. He took a couple players that I wanted. Hey, Zach, I had a bad miscue Thursday night. Tucker was on my bench. Yeah, so I should have shut up. Anyway, how are you, man? I'll start off with this, man. The Cleveland Guardians, they're playing well as of late, and it seemed like they are playing with more of a sense of urgency, in my opinion, that I have seen them play with at any point during this season. Likely or unlikely that we secure one of those wild card spots?
It's unlikely. It's you have to lean on all the cliches that you hear, that you roll your eyes at all year, but they actually matter at this point in the season, where the ones of take it day by day. Well, yeah, that's important. All you can do is win one game at a time. Can't worry about what everybody else is doing. Just got to worry about ourselves. And that's the key one here, because it's been impressive what the Guardians have done lately, and it's been a breath of fresh air, honestly. But, the Mariners won't stop winning. The Rangers won't stop winning, so that hasn't helped. So I think I'm looking right now, I see playoff odds at like 8%. I don't know what that all takes into account. I do know the schedule helps a little bit, because the teams that they're chasing, the Rangers, the Astros, the Mariners, they all play each other next week. So maybe they beat up on each other, and that allows the Guardians to kind of sneak in. But it's going to be tough. They've got to keep their foot on the gas for the next 2 weeks. They probably can only lose a few more games, and they're going to need some help.
Zach, we know the main argument around this team every offseason is always centered around the Dolans just not investing enough in making the roster better and building a competitive team, and that's going to be the case no matter what. But do you think there's a better argument for that if the team misses the playoffs, or if they make the playoffs again and then come up short and sort of, are in the same place they were, similar to last year, where they had some playoff success, but they didn't quite have enough to get over the hump?
Yeah, this is a tricky one, because you have to separate, we all have our own biases when we're analyzing this stuff, right? And so you have to separate, what you think deep down from what the front office thinks, and then that from what ownership probably thinks. And I think ownership does tend to have a rosier outlook on things than maybe is realistic. It's a complicated question, because, when they were losing 10 games in a row, and we were all screaming and yelling and venting about how things had gotten to that point, I look back on that now with the team at 5 games over 500 and scratching and clawing for a playoff spot. It doesn't really change what we were arguing about, right? They were on the cusp of the World Series, and they didn't build off of that. And they got to opening day, and every single person looking at this roster was yelling, this lineup is not good enough. It's worse than it was last year, and it wasn't good enough last year to get them over the hump. So that's still in play. If you've looked at how they've won games over the last couple of weeks, they're winning games 3-2, 2-1. It's never easy. So it's all those warts that we all saw, they still exist. And so no matter what happens from here, if they fall short of the playoffs, if they make the playoffs and win a series or two, no matter what happens, that doesn't change, the actual composition of the roster. I think we can be encouraged by what the pitching has done and think, okay, maybe there's more here than we realized, and maybe Cantillo can be a good piece, and Messick and Ciccone, and those are developmental stories those are successful. You didn't know about those guys at the beginning of the year. But on the hitting side, there's Manzardo, great job. You're a piece moving forward. Rocchio has been better in the second half, but we're still watching Gabriel Arias and Nolan Jones and Bo Naylor and, Austin Hedges. So, there's a lot of work left to be done, I think, no matter what happens from here.
Zach, you mentioned the pitching, and I know Slade had a dominant outing. Cantillo had a dominant outing. Tanner Bybee probably went out there and had the best game of his entire career. Complete game. He gives up 2 hits, 10 Ks. Where was that all season? Where has that been all season? And can that be sustained? Not, of course, that level of 9-inning dominance, but this man was slotted to be the ace. And yesterday he was an ace.
Yeah, and the thing I appreciate about him is that Earl, he would say all the same things you're saying. He said yesterday, basically, where has this been all season? It's been frustrating, and I think this happens in baseball more than any other sport, where sometimes you just go through it for a year, and the adjustments you need to make are tougher to make than you realized. This cat and mouse game between pitchers and hitters, it's never ending. And for Bybee, who's never really struggled in the majors, this was a big learning curve for him. So I think the fact that I said at the beginning of the month, I made a list of who I think needed a strong September the most, and I put him number 1. And I just think ending on a good note after what was a really frustrating year for him. And if you look at the underlying metrics, there's not a lot that's too alarming. A lot of stuff looks similar to the way it's looked the last couple of years. It's just sometimes you have those years where some balls that maybe would have gone to the warning track last year, they're going over the fence this year. And it's up to you to figure out why that's happening. I think for him is basically just his fastball was getting shelled for a while. But you've seen it, the last few starts, and especially, last night he was just electric. And, as you mentioned, you get that start from Ciccone at the start of the week, and that sets the tone. And then Cantillo the very next night, these guys are all one-upping each other, and I think that's really healthy. And it's, they need, you're right, Bybee was the ace of the staff coming into the season. I think Gavin Williams has supplanted him for now, but hey, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe there's that, friendly competition, and Bybee now goes out and tries to wrestle it back.
Talking with Zack Meisel of The Athletic on the Fan Hotline. Zach, looking ahead, I guess forecasting ahead a little bit to next year, one of the biggest complaints throughout the season was how first base was obviously handled with the platooning of Santana and Manzardo. And it kind of feels like next year is going to be a similar thing. I know Kafis has played normally a first baseman, but he's been playing outfield, so they've kind of found a different spot for him potentially. But you're going to have Manzardo there next year, and I'm assuming David Fry in some capacity is going to be looked at as, once he can play in the field again, being that guy. I know he can catch, obviously, too. But how do you think they handle sort of that first base spot next year? Do they finally just lean into Manzardo being the first baseman?
Yeah, they should. He's going to have to get better defensively. I don't think it's ever going to be pretty with him over there, but the footwork and stuff, there's a lot to work on, and hopefully that's what he devotes his off season in spring training to. But they have some flexibility, just because, as you said, Fry can bounce around. Kafis has shown he can be competent in right field. So, there's a lot of pieces here, and we don't really know how they fit. And I don't want to pencil in Chase DeLauder anywhere, because the guy can never stay healthy. But he's going to be an option for them in right field. And George Valera could be an option in right field. And, they've got a lot of guys like Juan Brito, another one who doesn't really have a position, but I think the focus needs to be just get the 9 best bats in there. And you can, it doesn't have to be Gold Glove defense everywhere. This team needs more offense, needs more thump. And so, whoever you trust is going to hit, I think that's what I'd prioritize. And then, try to make all the pieces fit after that. But Manzardo obviously is one of the top priorities, just in terms of guys you believe will continue to hit next season. So he needs to be in the lineup every day, whether that's first base, DH, or wherever fits.
Zach, do you believe that the Guardians front office will take the same approach this upcoming offseason that they have taken in years past? And the reason why I say that is because you talked about some of the bats that's in the lineup, and you said, those are still issues. Does Antonetti take the same approach this offseason, or does he learn from this past offseason how they approach this season?
Yeah, so you would hope that they'd learn. I always say it's a lot easier to learn from failure than it is from success. There's one looming dark cloud over everything, and it's not just with the Guardians. It's all of baseball, and that's the fact that a lot of people anticipate there's going to be a work stoppage after next season. And so you've already seen some teams like pull back financially that maybe, I think people expected the Mariners and the Orioles to spend more money last offseason, and I think behind closed doors, a lot of these teams are saying, well, we don't want to make commitments because we don't know if, you may pay someone on a multi-year contract, and then one of those years just isn't going to happen. So that's looming over everything, and it's why I'm not quite ready to make predictions on what certain teams may or may not do, because I think nobody knows what the landscape of baseball is going to look like after next season. And so we'll see how that plays into things. Hopefully it's not something that teams use as an excuse when they're positioned to go make moves that get them over the hump. But, that's what teams tend to do when they can make an excuse. So we'll see. But yeah, I think this proves, like, if you would have just upgraded the offense a little more, maybe you're not on the outside looking in right now. Maybe you're sitting comfortably in a wild card spot or something. So that would tell me, there's definitely motivation to go address the roster, but whoever knows.
What Chris Brown say? How you hating on the outside of the club? You can't even get in.
Exactly. He's got that high pitched laugh, right?
I was gonna say it's funny. It's funny that you say, they shouldn't use that as an excuse, but we know they will. And we know the Guardians are always looking for the excuses on not to spend. So I think you're spot on. The work stoppage certainly is kind of the dark cloud hanging over teams like the Guardians and in the sport in general. Zach, you talked about Chase DeLauder and obviously not being really able to really pencil him in anywhere because we don't know about his injury situation. We know Travis Bazzana also suffered the oblique injury this week. Second time he's been injured this season. Is there starting to be mounting concerns about his availability and health along the lines of some of these other prospects that have come through and had similar issues?
I would say with him, not quite yet. This is a different oblique, which I guess you could look at it either way.
Him and Shedeur Sanders, they share that, the oblique injuries.
Yeah, even like, Tarek Skubal was grabbing at his last night and had to leave his start early. So, like, those can be freak things sometimes. With Bazzana, I would say, like, my opinion of him hasn't changed in the course of a year. It's been an up and down season. I think he's learned a lot. Losing 8 weeks to injury, certainly, you hate to see that. But it's this is a big off season for him because he can come into spring training into big league camp next year, and I don't know that he's legitimately going to be given a chance to win an opening day job. They're going to have to figure out what makes sense for them in terms of service time manipulation and all that, of course. But he should be on this major league team at some point next season. So what is the path to getting there and to making sure he's ready? And so that's another guy where, as we're talking about, it's like they have a lot of intriguing options who are on the cusp of the majors. That's great. But you can't just sit on your hands all winter and say, well, we got Bazzana coming and DeLauder coming. Like, all those guys were injured and missed a lot of time this year. That can happen. So you have to make sure you have contingencies and proven talent in your lineup. And, if you have to trade some prospects to acquire that, maybe that's the path you take.
Zach, this is the last one I have for you. I'm on Spotrac right now, and I'm just looking at, team total payrolls. And this kind of goes back to the work stoppage that a lot of people believe is coming. The Cleveland Guardians right now is 25th with a payroll that's right up under $100 million. We talk a lot about a salary cap in baseball, but I'm pretty sure you kind of got your own thoughts as an analyst and as a fan. But what do you think? What is a reasonable salary floor per se for each MLB team that, okay, your payroll has to be at this at least?
Well, I know it's not what you just it's more than what you just read.
Damn sure ain't what I just said.
Because that was also their payroll in like 2001, right? And I'm pretty sure things don't cost in 2025 what they cost in 2001. So I would, part of that depends on what the TV deal looks like in a couple of years. The Guardians are like under MLB's domain now, and are there going to be more teams under that domain? Is it going to be more profitable? What does this look like in a couple of years? That's a huge question here, and how much money can teams make from that? Is there more balanced revenue sharing? The NFL solved it a long time ago with just the even revenue sharing, and that's why we don't talk about this stuff in football. Like, nobody cares that Green Bay is a tiny market. The Packers are an institution, and they can afford to give Jordan Love a huge contract, right? Like, that's the biggest problem, that baseball just, for so long, they were too short-sighted, and the owners, they've always favored the big markets and the wealthiest owners and the best players on the richest contracts, and it's hurt the popularity of baseball on a national scale because of it. So, I don't know what the numbers are here. There definitely needs to be a floor, especially if they're going to talk about a cap, but the players union is going to push back on all of this, and this is why a lot of people think it's going to get messy and could cost us games in 2027.
He's Zack Meisel of The Athletic. Does a tremendous job covering the Guardians, and he'll be doing so for at least the next couple weeks. We'll see if there's an extension to that if they make the playoffs. Zack, appreciate you as always, my man. Thank you so much.
Be great, brother.
You got it, guys. Take care.